sports world and Zingo TV. A lot to go over. Another week of Penn State sports, which basketball and hockey season wrapping up. A bunch of other sports getting started in spring. So lots to talk about. To start off, Penn State football. Just a few hours ago this morning, secured a 4-star quarterback it was unexpected that they would be able to get. Drew Aller, 4-star quarterback, who had Notre Dame, Iowa State, Michigan, Indiana, Washington, and Penn State on his list, and chose Penn State, a Medina, Ohio product. Medina High School. He produced a lot of good players, and of course, he did not have Ohio State on his list. Ohio State has actually gotten every single 4- and 5-star recruit from the state of Ohio that they've offered for over 15 years, but they had not offered him. So Drew Aller, trying to bite his home state, get back at them, committing to Penn State, one of their big rivals. So a huge grab by James Franklin and his staff to get Drew Aller out of Ohio to commit as a quarterback at Penn State. And he's a much bigger quarterback than anyone James Franklin has worked with during his time at Penn State. Of course, Trace McSorley, now on the Baltimore Ravens, more of a shorter quarterback. Trace McSorley at 6 feet, 200 pounds, and Drew Aller, a 6'5", 225-pound quarterback. And he's listed as the nation's number 6 pro style passer, and he's within the top 90 prospects in the entire country. So as of now, James Franklin's highest ranked quarterback he's ever had in his college coaching career. Hopefully to be going to be able to put Penn State over the edge as an elite quarterback for the Nittany Lions next year. Coach Franklin, as well as Mike Yurich, offensive quarterbacks coach, recruited Aller heavily, and then luckily able to take him away from the likes of those schools, Michigan, Notre Dame, some schools that compete heavily for recruits with Penn State. So Penn State getting a huge recruit, Drew Aller, can be able to pair him up with some of the 4-star linemen Penn State has gotten, really shaping up to be a very effective recruiting class for the Nittany Lions this year. 4-star defensive end Joe Strickland also visiting Penn State, and he's narrowing it down to just a few schools. Penn State can get him, that will shore up both lines as they have the offensive line. Also gotten a few recruits there. So I believe number 2 recruiting class in the Big Ten for 2022, the number 6 recruiting class in the country. So really shaping up well for Penn State in football. Going over to the court, Penn State basketball last night actually getting a major upset over Maryland. Maryland is a bubble team that will probably make the tournament. I mean, most metrics would have them making it unless they fall apart late in the season, which last night did not help. Last night might have guaranteed them a spot if they're able to beat Penn State, but that's an ugly loss for them to have at home, losing to Penn State, who is certainly not in the tournament. Penn State will not be receiving a bye. They'll be the highest ranked team to not get a bye. So they will be playing their first tournament game 9:00 on Wednesday, March 10th. Number 11 seed in the Big Ten tournament, 10-13, and 7-12 in the Big Ten. Penn State against Nebraska, who they have split with this year. They lost to Nebraska at home. It was Nebraska's first win in over 20 tries in the Big Ten. Lost to Nebraska at home a couple weeks ago, and that kind of started a pretty terrible skid for Penn State, losing to Michigan State, to Iowa and Ohio State. So Penn State, if they will have any hope at the tournament, they're going to have to win at least 4 games in the Big Ten tournament. So they play Nebraska this Wednesday as the second non-bye game. And Minnesota, who Penn State just beat a few days ago, will be playing Northwestern. Winner of that game plays Ohio State. Winner of Penn State Nebraska will get Wisconsin on Thursday. So if Penn State is going to have a Cinderella run to the tournament and win the Big Ten, they would have to go through Nebraska on Wednesday, which very, very likely they win that game. I mean, it would be awful end of the season if they were to lose that. Then you go through Wisconsin on Thursday, and that's a winnable game, and that could be a toss-up for Penn State. They played Wisconsin close this year. And then in the quarterfinals, they'd have to beat Iowa, who they did play close. They were beating them with just a few minutes to go in the game when they played in Iowa City 2 weeks ago. But Iowa is the more complete, more deep, and the deeper team. More Penn State out late, but so they'll have to beat Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Iowa. And if they win that, they will be in the semifinals against someone from the Illinois, Indiana, Rutgers trio. So a realistic path, if they were to win the Big Ten, a realistic path would go beating Nebraska, beating Wisconsin, beating Iowa, beating Illinois, and then beating either Michigan, Purdue, or Michigan State or Maryland. So a very tough path, certainly, for Penn State. But starts on Wednesday with a very winnable, and honestly, it would be shocking if they lost. I really think they're going to win by at least 10 points with a very winnable game against Nebraska. Over on the ice, Big Ten hockey tournament, it is a little bit different. The Big Ten hockey tournament bracket this year looking a little bit different just because, of course, Penn State playing the fewest games of any team off for a month before they played Notre Dame. They played in South Bend against Notre Dame this weekend after 4 straight series, 8 games that were canceled due to COVID issues and contact tracing within the Penn State program. But played at Notre Dame this weekend, lost both of those. As expected, Notre Dame is a much better team, and obviously Penn State was extremely rusty going on the road after not playing in about 5 weeks. It was ugly, though. They did get blown out a total of 12-3 in those 2 games, losing 5-2 on Friday, a 2-2 game in the third period, and then Notre Dame just ran away with it, and then a 7-1 game on Saturday. So really not competitive at all in that second one. But Penn State will get another chance at them as the Big Ten tournament. We'll have Wisconsin winning the Big Ten and getting the bye. So March 15th will be Wisconsin playing the winner of Penn State Notre Dame. So Penn State, their only path to the tournament will be winning the Big Ten as well, like the basketball team. So Penn State Notre Dame playing each other on Sunday, March 14th at noon. The winner of that will get number 1 seed Wisconsin, which will be the next day at 4:30. If Penn State's able to win that, then they will be in the championship game with a shot to go to the tournament. They will play the winner of Michigan, Ohio State, Minnesota, Michigan State. So they will need to get vengeance on Notre Dame for the sweep this past weekend in South Bend, and then they'll need to beat Wisconsin. And this tournament, of course, again, at Notre Dame. So Penn State familiar, just played there twice last weekend. Didn't even end up mattering. The standings ended up locking in, but Penn State playing there twice last weekend, losing both, will get another shot at the hosts at the Fighting Irish Compton Family Ice Arena, March 14th to 16th, hosted by Notre Dame. So Penn State hockey looking to rebound and get wins over an upset over Notre Dame and Wisconsin and put themselves in the championship game next week. Out on the women's side, today, Penn State women's basketball finishing their season coming up. They do play today against Michigan State at 6:30. But Penn State women's basketball, another disappointing year as you know, similar to the men. Is they're 9-14 to 6-13 in the conference. Losing to their last three Big Ten games to Rutgers twice and to Maryland and the Big Ten tournament. Or sorry, not today. They'll be playing on Wednesday. Wednesday, starting their first game of the Big Ten tournament, playing Michigan State at the Bankers Life Field Test in Indianapolis. So Penn State women's basketball moving on to the Big Ten tournament. Wednesday, they'll have their first game against Michigan State. The Penn State, let's see here. So this past weekend, also women's soccer, field hockey, wrestling, gymnastics, both men's and women's, baseball, tennis, lacrosse, and soccer. Everybody playing all around Penn State athletics. And then both the men and women will get underway with the Big Ten tournaments, basketball on Wednesday, and then this weekend, softball, baseball, field hockey, everybody getting underway for another series. As Penn State has actually avoided now for a week any COVID issues in all of their sports. They've had games continue played as scheduled, and then this weekend they will have softball playing against Iowa, baseball against Indiana this weekend. So hopefully, going to be able to get those games in with the COVID issues passing by. And as of course, the most important and most excited for games this weekend will be as men's hockey gets underway in the Big Ten tournament on Monday, 1 week from today. And if the basketball teams, if either one of them, especially the men's team, are still alive come this weekend, that would be very impressive. That would be fantastic, as the NCAA men's selection show will be next Sunday at 6:00 p.m. Eastern. So the Big Ten tournament, the Big Ten championship earlier that day. If Penn State is still playing, really in 3 days, that'd be exciting, because they're not expected to do so. If they're assuming the assumption is they beat Nebraska and lose to Wisconsin, so if they're still playing come the weekend, come Friday, then they'd be playing with house money, working on a game against Iowa on Friday afternoon. But first up, Nebraska, the most important game of the season now for the day, will be Nebraska this Wednesday at about 9:00. For Big Ten, Penn State baseball, they're, as I said, playing at Indiana this weekend. They played this past weekend as well. Got underway after losing 2 to Northwestern, 2 out of 3 Northwestern this past weekend, or the weekend before. They were played Northwestern again in Minneapolis. Got a win on Sunday to even up that season series 2-2. Actually had all sorts of different exciting games with Northwestern, beating them 6-3 in the first game, then losing 2-0, then losing 5-2, and then winning 13-10. So within the first 3 games, they had 18 total runs, and then the fourth game they had 23. So never know what you're going to see in Penn State baseball game. This weekend, go to Indiana for 4, a game Friday afternoon, doubleheader Saturday, then a game Sunday. Next weekend, hosting Maryland, hosting Michigan for 3, and then going to Rutgers, Michigan State, Purdue. So hopefully going to be able to get in all of their games, as the baseball team has nearly a full schedule this season. They'll be playing about 38 games or so, with the hope that they're able to get all of those in before the Big Ten tournament. And being able to play every single team in the Big Ten, not every single team home and away, but many teams they're going to be able to play home and away, and they have at least 2 games against every single, or 1 series against every single team in the Big Ten. In other news of Penn State athletics, Penn State doing a bit of a celebration for Women's History Month with the softball team and the women's soccer team, and as well as the field hockey team, just showcasing more the history of those programs and some of their players, trying to get a few more fans, a few more eyes on them, as those are some of the certainly non-revenue sports, but exciting and good representatives of the school in any case. So Penn State working to get more fans for those sports. In addition, Penn State wrestling, of course, one of the most dominant programs in all of NCAA athletics. Penn State wrestling, Aaron Brooks had captured his 2nd consecutive Big Ten title this past weekend, as Penn State this past weekend in the Big Ten, the Big Ten tournament. They were able to capture that championship for Aaron Brooks in the Big Ten Wrestling Championship. Aaron Brooks is his second one again, but Penn State sent 4 wrestlers to the Big Ten finals. Perfect season so far for Penn State. As Cale Sanderson, the famed Penn State wrestling legendary coach, now has 9 grapplers qualified for the NCAA championship within a 2-week period. They went perfect 4-0 this weekend, 13-2 in the session, and they're now second. They're second place in team standings with 111.5 points, just behind Iowa at 126.5. And of course, Penn State, like Notre Dame, is having for the Big Ten hockey tournament. Penn State having this home advantage as they're playing this whole Big Ten tournament at the Bryce Jordan Center in State College. Penn State junior Roman Bravo Young, who Penn State looking to recruit more wrestlers out of the West Coast. Roman Bravo Young from Tucson, Arizona, the number 2 nationally ranked wrestler in his weight class, was able to defeat Chris Cannon from Nebraska in the first semifinal of the night, scoring quickly. And then Penn State's Nick Lee also winning his match, beating Sebastian Rivera of Northwestern, as well as Carter Starochi. Was able to beat Mikey Labriola of Nebraska. So Aaron Brooks, the last one, who we'd said the number 1 nationally ranked wrestler at his weight class, was against John Poznaski of Rutgers, and Penn State, Rutgers, Poznaski, Brooks. It was actually a long battle, but Brooks was able to win, take a 2-0 lead at the 42nd mark. So Penn State wrestling staying dominant as usual. The most dominant program in at Penn State in any respect. The most dominating team at Penn State. So just continuing that, a great look for the school. But also wanted to read a quote again. Drew Aller, the highlight of the whole show. Penn State getting him as a an elite, another quarterback recruit. Aller saying, quote, "I would like to thank every coaching staff that has believed in me enough to extend an offer and build a relationship with me, and I'm very thankful for each offer I've received over this process. I would also like to thank everyone who has helped me through this crazy journey. Thank you to both my parents for keeping me grounded and pushing me to work hard every day. Thank you to my sister Ryan for being my biggest fan. Thank you. Thanks a lot more people. Thanks his high school coaches. Thanks his QB trainer and his high school." And then he said, more importantly, at the bottom, growing up in Ohio, it has always been a dream of mine to have the opportunity to play and to compete in the Big Ten. With that being said, and after many great conversations with my family, I'm excited to say I'll be committing to Penn State University. Thank you to Coach Yurkic and Coach Franklin for believing me enough to give me the opportunity to play football for such an incredible program. So a long and thankful response from Drew Aller about the Penn State, about his offer to accepting his offer to play football at Penn State. Starting in 2022. So it's just a huge grab at quarterback for Penn State, and his highlights, he already looks like a college-ready quarterback. He's just for a 17-year-old, he is very well developed with a really pro-style passing arm and passing stats. So really exciting as Penn State's going to go from Will Levis to Drew Aller over the course of a couple years. Really exciting stuff for Penn State. Penn State basketball, of course, is tough because they did have a very disappointing season, and it'll likely end in a couple days, either against Nebraska or Wisconsin, or if they somehow beat them, Iowa. Likely it'll end there. But it is tough. They did have the toughest schedule in the entire country. Weren't able to manage that. They did lose a couple of their very few weak games like Nebraska. They weren't able to win those, and that ended up being the difference. As they if they had been able to win, they had such a tough schedule. If they'd been able to win a couple of these games, like losing to Virginia Commonwealth, lost to VCU early in the season, um, lost to Indiana by 2, to Michigan by 4. Um, lost to Ohio State a couple times, once by 4, lost to Michigan State by 2. They just had so many close losses. Nebraska, that was just the ugliest one that led to their kind of downfall, losing 3 of their next 4 against Ohio State, Iowa, and Purdue. Other than that one Nebraska win in the second game in there. So um, Penn State really just a tough schedule and a tough season, but really if they'd been able to win some of those games, just win those kind of 4 games I'd mentioned, the Michigan State game at Michigan State they lost by 2, at Ohio State losing by 4, Indiana losing by 2, Michigan losing by 4, and then VCU and Seton Hall, which went into overtime. They've been able to just get those wins. They would turn a 10-13 record into a 13-10 or a 14-9 record. And with 2 wins in the Big Ten tournament, they would absolutely be in. So it's going to be tough, but I was actually able to attend the Minnesota game senior day. Not that it really was a senior day because there were few fans in the audience, maybe 7,500 fans, pretty much all family of players. But Penn State, with a bunch of seniors who were a big part of the program, graduating this year, finishing up their Penn State basketball careers. So that was a huge win against Minnesota, but it beat Minnesota by about 25 points as they said goodbye for the last time at the Bryce Jordan Center to seniors guard Jamari Wheeler, forward Trent Buttrick, guard Taylor Nussbaum, forward John Harrar. The 4 of them, the 4 seniors, Jamari Wheeler, of course, one of the best players on the team this year. Over the course of his career, he's just continued to play more and more of, originally with playing under the team of Tony Carr, and then Lamar Stevens, Mike Watkins, etc. Wheeler playing a lot this season, and between him, Trent Buttrick, whose role has expanded on the team significantly, he's become a huge part of the program. Taylor Nussbaum, John Harrar, who replaced Mike Watkins, all very important to the program. And hopefully, after they beat Minnesota, won at Maryland, hopefully they can get at least a couple wins in the Big Ten tournament, maybe make some noise or kill somebody else's chances. Always fun to play spoiler this time of year. So that'll get underway on Wednesday, as I said. But until then, Penn State basketball starting their tournament on Wednesday. Penn State hockey starting on Monday, both in the Big Ten tournament. Basketball in Indianapolis against Nebraska. Hockey at Notre Dame against Notre Dame. Football getting a great big recruit quarterback. So this season is the season, and everything is looking up for Penn State athletics all the way around on different sports. The women's side as well has been touched on. So until next week, we'll see you then. My name is Jeremy Schooler. Another episode of the Penn State Sports Report here on Spanglish Sports World, Zingo TV. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.